All right, as I've discussed on the program throughout this week, the horrific attacks on Israel last weekend both galvanized the Israeli people and led to a worldwide outpouring of support for Israel. But it's also exposed the anti-Semitic hatred of many on the left, even here in the United States. Now, the left often claims that words are violence, and protesters marched in Washington, D.C. on Sunday chanting, "Settler, settler, you will learn." You know, by the millions, we've returned. Now, in New York yesterday, an Israeli student was assaulted at Columbia University with Hamas militants calling for a worldwide day of jihad tomorrow. You know, can we expect more violence? And how can Christians show support for Israel as we pray and act for peace? With me now to discuss this is Sam McCarthy, who is a news writer at the Washington Stand. Sam, thanks for joining us today.
Tony.
So amid the outpouring of support for Israel, many on the left have stated open support for terrorism and for the brutality that has been perpetrated upon innocent civilians. I mean, what have you observed in this?
Well, largely silence from the left. You've had a lot of protests that you can't necessarily attribute to the left, but to Muslim immigrants in Western nations. Lots of protests all across the globe. You've got some in like Sydney, Australia, London in England, Dublin in Ireland last night. You've got a number, as you noted, across the US as well. So you've got all these big protests. You've got largely silence from a lot of political figures on the left. For instance, Representative Rashida Tlaib simply has refused to take down the Palestinian flag that she has hanging outside of her office in Congress. You know, Islam has been a sort of pet cause of the lefts for years now. Islam incorporates a hatred of the West, which is one of the foundational tenets of leftism. And so especially when Islam is empowered, when Islam is promoted through attacks like the Hamas attack and the idea of jihad, you typically have silence from those on the left, either silence or support. That's typically what it's met with. And you've got groups like, sorry.
I was just going to ask about tomorrow, this call for a global day of jihad. What do we know about that?
Well, you have the former chief of Hamas, Khalid Mishal, who's now the head of Hamas's diaspora office based in Qatar. He called for a global day of jihad tomorrow, Friday, October 13th. He said that Muslims must, quote, head to the squares and streets of the Arab and Islamic world on Friday. He also said, quote, tribes of Jordan, sons of Jordan, brothers and sisters of Jordan, this is a moment of truth. He's called for Muslims across the globe, whether predominantly in the Middle East, but across the globe, including in Western nations like the US, to take to the streets, protest, and march in solidarity with the Hamas attackers. In a video reportedly posted to YouTube that it was quickly deleted, Mishal also called on Muslims to, quote, show anger and, quote, send a message of rage to Zionists and to America, which is pretty concerning. And the Middle East Media Research Institute has also reported that Hamas itself reiterated Mishal's call for jihad.
So, but jihad is a term. It's a term that means a lot. So what does that actually mean? It's not just like, you know, let's go out and then get the bullhorn and have a protest. That is a loaded term.
Yeah, so jihad is an Arabic word. It means yearning or struggling. It's often used in reference to war or proselytization by means of violence or war. Under classic Islamic Sharia law, jihad is understood to mean war against non-believers, infidels, us, Christians, Jews, anybody who's not a Muslim. Modernist Islamic scholars have tried to kind of reframe the term as referring primarily to defensive military action, but it's pretty clear from the way that Mishal is using the term that he's using it in the classic Sharia law sense of the term. So it's essentially warfare.
Sam, you've been writing about some of these things. How should Christians respond?
Well, prayer is always the first response. You know, on Saturday, in addition to the Hamas attack, we also celebrated the 452nd anniversary of the Battle of Lepanto, which is when the Muslim Ottoman Empire attempted to attack Europe. And you had a small naval fleet made up of Christians. They called themselves the Christian League. You had a small naval fleet defeated their enemy, which vastly outnumbered them, the Muslim fleet. They defeated them, and they attributed that amazing victory to prayer. So really, prayer is the first line of defense. As one of your guests noted earlier, vigilance is also key. Vigilance, be safe. Don't live in fear, but certainly be vigilant, be safe, and again, above all, pray.
All right, Sam McCarthy, thanks so much for joining us today. Great to see you. And keep up the good work
You
on the
as well.
Washington
Thanks, Tony.
stand.
Thank you very much.